Hi, I'm Tom Miggott from Tom Miggott Photography, and I welcome you to the Lauriston Castle and grounds. This is an amazing place, just located on the outskirts of Edinburgh, along the shores of the Firth of Forth here in Scotland. And I love this place. I mean, the gardens are beautiful. Right there, you don't see them, but there are elders playing croquet. A little bit further in, you see a Japanese garden, where I will actually take you in another episode to cover the filters. And the house behind, oh, the house. You know, I'm French. Castles, big houses, they talk to me. And that one, well, it didn't leave me cold, let's say that. So I brought you here because, well, the topic I want to cover today really deserves a fantastic location. You may remember, for those of you who've been following me for the past 2.5 years, you may remember when I defined what it is to me, the art of photography. What I said back then was, I think the art of photography is the art of capturing light, simply because without light, you would not have photography. But I came to realize that very often we tend to forget another crucial factor, and that is the shadows. You see, without shadows, you would still have photography, but it would not be the same, it would be blend. You see, it's the right combination of brights and darks that will give you the texture, will bring the emotion that you need to convey in your photograph. Very often you may have heard photographers, famous photographers, trying to explain photography, and they always say something like, oh, to me, photography is all about seeing light, understanding light. So what do they mean, really? I mean, can we actually see light? Well, what they mean is that you need to recognize the nature of light. And by recognizing the nature of light, choosing how to use it at your advantage. So I was hoping to actually illustrate this concept here today on location with natural light. Unfortunately, the forecast has been changing all the time. And about 5 minutes ago it was grey, and well, they claim that in about 5 minutes from now, see the dark cloud there, is going to rain. So just to be sure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you guys to my studio, and we're going to use Karen, who's going to be my model for today, and we're going to be using my flashes. And we're going to see, by using those flashes just for the sake of the experiment, to have some light, you're going to see the different natures of light and what we can achieve with the light. And then it's up to you to choose it accordingly. One thing that I want to bring your attention to is that although I'm going to be using flashes, that doesn't change really anything about the nature of light. It will help me to show it to you, but you can experience the same thing just outside without flashes, using your reflector, using the sun, the natural light. So let's go to the studio and meet Karen. See you in a bit.
Hi guys, so we're back in the studio, and before we jump into the experiment, I just want to go through the theory before with you. So the nature of light, the quality of light, well, basically it all comes down to two extremes: soft light and hard light, or harsh light. What are those? Well, a soft light is going to be a light that is going to wrap around your subject, almost eliminating all dark shadows, and we're going to see gradient from the very bright side of your subject to the less bright side, but you're not going to have a very contrasted shadow, and in fact you won't be able to trace the contour of the shadow. And if you can't do that, then that's a sign that you're dealing with soft light. On another hand, hard or harsh light is the opposite. So it's where you're going to have very contrasted shadows, and you can really mark, you can trace the contour of your shadow very easily, and that's going to be a harsh light. So let's go through a few images which I took outside and inside, and you'll see that we can actually obtain soft light inside as well as outside using natural light or flashes, and same thing with a harsh light. So let's dive in. Well, this was a shot that I did in the souk in Morocco, in Marrakesh, and you can see here we're dealing with harsh light. Why? Because look at the shadows of the people in the street. You can very easily trace the contour of your shadow, so this is a real sign of harsh light. Next one, harsh light again in Morocco. So you can see, really you can mark the contour of the shadows right there. So that's a sign again. Here, harsh light as well. Look over here. You see, you've got your light, and then you can trace the contour of your shadows. So that's hard light. Next one, hard light again. We've got here very straight shadows. Here on the ground as well, on the floor. So hard. This one, hard, shot with flash. You can see you can have the contour of the musician on the wall. That's a sign of harsh light. Here is, you can still see the contour, so we're still on the harsh side of the spectrum. However, the difference is a little bit more graduated, right? So it's not the harshest light, the hardest or the harshest light you could get. So we're getting softer a little bit, but it's still hard. Here, on the other hand, this is soft. This is soft. You don't have strong shadows. It's just gradient of light. You can really see the details everywhere, but it's getting really, really soft. On this one, it's a mix. It's a bit like the phone booth. It's not very. You can still trace the contour, so it's still a little bit harsh, but you can still see the detail. So it's not. It's a little bit soft. On this one, it's soft because here on the cheek, you wouldn't be able to actually trace the contour. You can do it a little bit, but you can see, even if I zoom in, you see the gradient. It's soft. It's not strong. So that's getting soft with a hint of hard light a little bit. Here, soft light again. Look how the shadows, we have shadows. Soft light does not mean that you don't have shadows. It just means that it's not going to be that contrasted. So here you wouldn't be able to really trace the contour very easily. Look at it over here. But it's still shadows, and that gives you the dimension in your photography. Hence what I said in the intro, you need shadows in your photography. Otherwise, well, it's all flat, no texture. Here, harsh light. Strong contour that you can make here as well as on the face. You can really trace the shadows, harsh. Here, outside, soft. So this is the first one where we have really soft light outside. There are shadows, right? The shadows over here is definitely darker than at the front, but it's a real gradient. You can't trace the contour of the shadow. That's soft light. This one, soft light. Portrait, usually you want to go for soft light, and we'll talk about that on many occasions in the future. But especially when you deal with babies and toddlers, you want something soft, gentle, kind, and with mummy, the idea of wrapping everything. You don't want strong shadows, high contrast in this type of shot. So that's soft. Here, it's a kid, but here I wanted to play with the hat and the shadow of that hat, so I had to actually make sure that my light from my flash was going to produce a strong, hard light, and that's what I got. Here, once again, I wanted the ambience, I wanted harsh light, I wanted a strong break between the light and the shadows, so you can really trace the contour right here, and same underneath her face. And we'll talk about how to use the harsh light in your advantage to trace the contour of people's faces and figures in the future. Here, outside, and once again, this is a soft light because look, this croquet player is bending over. You would expect some kind of a shadows somewhere around, and we have a 360 view of the scene, and there's no shadow, so that's soft light. So now I think you understood what is soft light, what is hard light, and in between. But what defines soft light? What makes it soft? I mean, we just saw the result, but what's the reason for it? So let's go through a few schematics that I made. Basically, there's two things that are responsible for making soft light. The first thing is going to be the size of your light source. The bigger your light source, and that's a ratio with your subject. So the bigger your light source, the softer your light is going to be. As well as the closer your light source to your subject, the softer the light is going to be. So here what we see is it's basically the light source that you have here and a few numbers for those of you who are into numbers. So you've got your subject here, and basically if your light source is about half its size in distance to the subject, it will actually cover an angle about 90 degrees. So it's going to wrap around your subject then if you actually take that same light source and you just keep going and you go further away, what happens is that you realize that as soon as it's like, for example, the same distance to your subject as his own size, then suddenly you actually drop the coverage and you're only going to cover 53 degrees. And as we go further and further and further, you realize that we have 28 degrees and then 11 degrees when you go 5 times farther from your subject in comparison to your own light source size. So one thing as well that we'll hopefully see in the experiment, one thing that won't change and is not responsible for transforming a soft light into harsh light and vice versa, is the power of your light source. The power of the light source has nothing to do with the quality of light, and by quality I only refer to soft and hard light. Power has nothing to do with it. And then there is, of course, the size of your light source. So let's see this. If you have a flash, a little flash that's going to be about that size, it's quite small, and well, you've got your subject, and we're much bigger than a flash. If you actually put your flash 2.75 meters away from your subject, you realize that actually the wrapping coverage of your flash is going to be only 1 degree. So because of that tiny degree of coverage, you're bound to have harsh light. It's not going to wrap around your subject and it's going to produce harsh light. So to this, it means that when you use a flash like this, you will always obtain hard light or harsh light. But there are ways to go around it, and we'll talk about it. Then what about outside? At the beginning of the intro, I said I wanted to illustrate this concept using natural light. Well, it's the same thing. Let's talk about the sun a little bit. You would think the sun is huge. I mean, look, I got the numbers right. It's 865,000 miles diameter. I mean, this is massive, right? So you would think, well, hang on, Tom, the light source is so big. There's nothing bigger than the sun. So you're bound to have soft light, but we did see sometime you had harsh light, like in Morocco. So how do you explain it? Well, very simple, really. How far is the sun from us? I wrote there that actually, when you compare the distance of the sun to us, to its own diameter, it's actually 100 times further from us than its own size. That's huge. And therefore, by default, when you turn the sun on, by default, it will have an angle of coverage of 0.5 degrees. That's nothing. That's even less than your own flash. So by default, the sun will always produce hard or harsh light. But so how did we obtain soft light? Well, we got a fantastic thing, that is clouds. You see, what happens is that when the Earth is actually covered with clouds, what happens is all the sunbeams are actually hitting the clouds, and now, well, your light source is no longer your sun, really. The light source becomes your cloud, and so the cloud covers a much bigger coverage and is getting so close from us, or to us, that the light source is closer and bigger. And that's how you actually diffuse the light, and that's how the natural light wrap our subject. Whether it's a building, like at the intro you saw, there was no shadows, or a human being, or any subject for that matter. So I hope that made sense to you as to what is soft light and hard light, and what are the factors to obtain such light. So now let's go in the experiment, and for the experiment, basically, I'm going to have Karen as the model, as I said, and we're going to be using 2 softboxes. I know we never talked about softboxes in the past. I'll do another episode where I'll go into the detail of softboxes, but I'm going to show you the results of what we just explained here as part of the theory. All right, let's go there.
All right, so Here's the setup. We've got Karen. Welcome, Karen. I love this model. She's fantastic. She's absolutely trustworthy, and she does absolutely anything I want, almost. What else we have? We have two softboxes, and I'll talk about softboxes in another episode. But here you can see this is the big boy. Why? Well, look at me. I'm standing next to it. It's 50 inches by 50 inches. It's huge, massive, huge light source. Inside, well, inside what do I have? I have a regular speed light, just like this one, on a trigger. So if you don't actually remember what triggers are, how I actually trigger my flashes, I invite you to watch the video. You've got the link here on your screen. I basically have the trigger here on my camera, the Canon 60D. I've got a trigger under that flash, and I've got here the other softbox, which is a lot smaller, but it's the same principle. I've got my flash here and the trigger just underneath it. So how I'm going to do, basically I've got the two flashes using the same group A for the two of them, but I want to be able to actually trigger one and not the other, so I'm actually going to use two different channels. This is channel 2, this is channel 1. For the time being, I want to show you the result of using just the small speed light right there as your light source. Nothing else in front of it, just it. And I'm just going to place it just like that. One thing though, if I was to take the shot here, as you can see, the inside of my softbox right here is white. So this would actually bounce the light and actually lit up that side here. And I don't want this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn this like that. And although this light, this softbox here is actually not producing any light, I just want to avoid the bounce. So this should be it, and I'm going to start at a quarter of a power. So let me set up the power here from the camera. So I'm actually at a sync speed, and I'm going to set up at a quarter of a power for the flash. And let me just take the shot, and this is what you get. So as you can see, this is a really hard light. You can definitely draw the contour of the shadow on her face right in the middle. That's hard light, no doubt about it. Remember what I said about whether or not the power of your light source affect the softness of the light, and I said no, it doesn't. So let's increase the power now from a quarter to a full power. So let's do this. So if I choose the right menu here, all right, from a quarter, I'm actually going to full power, and I take the shot. All right, so what do we see? We see clearly, obviously, the picture is going to be more lit up, right? On the left side is clearly brighter. But did that change actually anything about the softness or about the harshness of the light? No, it doesn't. We still have that strong contour of the shadow. Bear in mind, you see the ceiling is white, right? So the light may spill and bounce a little bit on the other wall on the ceiling, but the harshness, you can still draw the contour on her face. So you see clearly the power has no effect whatsoever on the softness of the light or the harshness of the light. So the next test now is I'm actually going to use the softbox as a softbox. Right now it didn't work as a softbox because, well, there was nothing in front of my flash. So to use that type of softbox, I need to rotate the flash. So I'm actually rotating the flash to the back, so the light will basically bounce off the back, which is reflective, and then come out of it. And I'm actually placing the most important piece of your softbox, which is the front panel, which is a diffuser, and that's going to diffuse the light. And as a result, your flashlight initially was very small, right? The ending, I mean, we can see it here, it's really small. So that was my light source. Now my light is bouncing off the back of the softbox, which makes the light source a little bit bigger, and then it goes through this. So now my light source is no longer this, but the entire rectangle here. So I have a much bigger light source. I'm still at the same distance, but a bigger light source. Let's see what happens. And still the same power. So I'm leaving it at a full power just for the sake of it. So you see what happens. So obviously we lost a little bit of power because, remember, I'm on manual setting for the flash. So I'm still a full power, and when you use a diffuser, whatever that is, it will automatically diffuse the light, and therefore you're going to lose a little bit of light. So that's the reason why that left side is not as bright as it used to be without the use of the softbox. But you can see now that the light is a lot softer. You can't really draw a very clear contour between the bright side and the dark side. You see the shadow is there undeniably, but you can't really trace. There's a very graduated tone there. So then let's see what happens when we going to use a much bigger light source. So I'm actually going to turn this around right there, and let's use the big boy. So it's at equal distance, and all right. So as you here, it's about a full arm between the head and that softbox, and same as this one. So I'm changing the group now of my flash. Not the right menu again. Actually, it's not the group. The group is the same, but it's the channel. So I'm now using channel 2, and I'm staying at the full power. And let's see what happens. And here you can really see that you don't have a contour anymore. Really, you had less contour already when we used the softbox comparing to no softbox. But now with this big boy, it's huge. It's massive. So this is fantastic. And let's see what happens if I actually bring this even closer. So let's bring it closer. Really close, right? You guys might not even be able to see the model anymore, but I can. You can see that's wrapping even more. So this is how you get soft light or hard light, and it's depending on the mood, the ambience, the texture you want to reveal, that you're going to be using one or the other. In portraiture, obviously, it's not that flattering to use hard light, because hard light will make strong shadows under your chin and on the nose, depending on the orientation of the light, and we'll see all this in other episodes. I just wanted to do one step at a time, and I just wanted to talk to you about soft and hard light. So I hope you understood that. There's different type of diffusers. So we've got the softbox right here, and I'll talk to you in another episode why I like softboxes. But you also have what we call the umbrellas, and it's well, it's like an umbrella really. It's like this. That's the cheapest diffuser, and we'll talk about it a bit more, but it will diffuse the light. And so that's it for today. So I hope you found that informative. As usual, there's all the details in my blog with all the photos, so you can take time to go through them and see all the settings. And until next time, this is Tom Migot saying, if you like it, well, capture it, soft or hard, you choose.